Today's video is all about the cost of living in Vancouver, and if you're thinking of moving to Vancouver, this is going to be critically important. But this is not just your typical cost of living video. By the end of this video, we're going to determine whether $100,000 of income is enough for you and your family to survive and thrive in Vancouver. And something I'm super excited about, we're going to do that by getting really deep and intimate into my own personal expenses and budget. So by the end of this video, we're going to get to know one another incredibly well. Are you ready for it? Let's get into the cost of living in Vancouver right now. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Sebastian Albrecht with the Living in Vancouver, BC team. And if you're new to the channel, you may not know that I actually have 4 children. There's a picture in behind me there of those 4 kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and we have twins that are 2.5. As much joy as they bring me, as much as I love them, and as cute as they are incredibly expensive. And going through these expenses has really solidified just how much having children in a costly city like Vancouver really costs me. One of the biggest expenses anybody in Vancouver has is housing. Whether you're owning or renting, it's a big outflow of cash every single month. And a lot of people are looking at between 30 to 50% of their income going to housing, whether you're owning or renting. In our case, housing, like with everybody else, is one of our biggest expenses. Our mortgage is $4,590 every month. Saying that out loud really does pain me deep down inside. A little bit of this, I think, is just therapy about sharing all these numbers with you, so bear with me. But yes, our mortgage is $4,590, a significant amount. Our property taxes are $690, another significant amount. And I've been talking in past videos about property taxes in Vancouver being fairly reasonable, but you have to keep in mind how expensive our real estate is. So my property taxes are over $8,000 annually, broken down to $690 every single month. And they're going to be rising. Next year, it looks like they're going to be increasing by about 9%. So we're looking at probably about $750 a month next year. My home insurance, property insurance, is $270 a month. Another significant amount of money that I have to pay because I hold a mortgage. They require me to hold home insurance as well, just in case the house burns down. Who knows with those 4 kids what's gonna happen. But it's not all money that's just going out the door. I do get some income from my house, and that helps carry the load, I would say. So we do rent out half of our house, roughly. It's about 2/5 of the house, the basement suite, and that is bringing in $2,330 every month. So that works out to, my cost of housing is $3,220 every single month. A significant amount of money, but it's not as much a tenant would have to pay if they're currently gonna step up and rent something similar. I'd say a similar home would probably rent for about $5,500, maybe $6,000 a month. The standard 3-bedroom home in Vancouver, whether it's a condo or a townhouse, right now is $4,800 a month. Obviously, if you go out into the suburb, those numbers are gonna decrease. So you might find in Surrey, maybe you're paying about $3,200 a month for a 3-bedroom rental, and you're probably paying about 1.5, 1.7 for a similar house. So significant numbers no matter where you're looking. You're gonna be very hard pressed to find a 3-bedroom home, a house really under $1 million. In fact, I don't think you will in any of the suburbs. You have to go really far out, let's say to Mission, to find a number around 1 million, but it'd be closer, it'd be more like 1.2 million for a house in that area. So some very significant numbers in Vancouver when it comes to housing. Not that affordable for many people, but let's get into some more numbers. Now, what about food and groceries? You can imagine with a household of 6 people, we go through a lot of food. Thankfully, my kids aren't teenagers yet, and luckily I only have 1 boy. Hopefully these numbers stay on the lower end for the future, but who knows? But at the moment, we're paying about $900 to $1,000 a month in grocery expenses. We go through a lot of milk, a lot of yogurt, and a lot of Cheerios. But one of the things that we've chosen to do, because my wife and I are both working full time, we do prepared meals. And so that gets delivered to us every single week. We pay about $600 a month for that service. So in total, we're looking at about $1,600 a month for food. And those prepared meals are a huge advantage when we're coming home from after a long day at work, just sort of going through that process of having to think of what are we gonna feed the kids? What are they gonna wanna eat? It sort of takes that all out of our responsibility. It's very easy to prepare, very quick, meals are done, and it's all healthy, kids love it, we enjoy it. In the long term, it's actually, we've decided that it's not that significant an extra cost for that convenience. But Certainly not something that is a requirement, definitely something that I'd consider a bit of a luxury, but for us, it's made sense. And so our grocery expenses come down to about $1,600 a month. So if you are thinking of moving to Vancouver, I'm a real estate agent that's helped hundreds of people move to this city over my 16-year career, and I can help you too. My contact information is right there on the screen. It's gonna be down in the description below. Reach out to me anytime and we can get started on your move to Vancouver. All right, so now eating out, just going out in general, it can be very expensive in Vancouver. And to be honest, we don't do a lot of it, but it is really important to spend some quality time with my wife. A big line item for us is our date nights. We try and go out twice a month, spend a couple evenings a month at least. It's really high quality time just between the two of us away from our children. And we're lucky enough that my mother lives nearby. So she most often comes and babysits all 4 children. Sometimes my mother-in-law will come out. She lives on Vancouver Island, and so she has to, spend an overnight at least, but she'll do that every once in a while just to get some good quality time with the kids, but also just to give us that ability to get some time away from the family, which I feel is incredibly important. So we budget about $500 a month for that. And $500 is 2 pretty good date nights. It depends on where you're going and what you're spending your money on, of course. It could be just one pretty nice dinner. We went out the other night to Zirak, which is a great Afghan restaurant on Main Street, had a couple drinks each, and then some really good food. We're very full, very satisfied, and that came out to about $250 with tip and everything. It's not the cheapest restaurant, but we could see some other options. A nice night out for 2 people at a restaurant could be around $100, $125, and then you might go for a couple drinks, and those typically are $15 to $20, and you might go to the movies, or you might go to a concert, or the other night we went to Cirque du Soleil. That was a pretty pricey night, kind of blew our $500 budget. But over the course of a year, we do spend $500 every month on date nights. We also have a line item for family nights or family events. We don't go out to dinner too often as a family. Having 4 children, it's pretty stressful, especially with those 2 little kids. Not everybody knows how to behave in a restaurant. So we might go to a White Spot or an Earl's, something that's pretty family friendly, and they're not overly expensive, but we're looking at probably about $100 to $150 for us to go out for a meal, whether it's lunch or dinner as a family of 6. And we don't do that every single month. So on average, that kind of averages out to about $100 a month. And then the other line item I have here is for treats, whether that's a treat for me, getting a coffee out, or taking the kids and grabbing an ice cream cone or some candy at the candy store or something. On average, that probably works out to about $100 between the 6 of us. So eating out, going out in combination costs us about $700 a month. Now clothes. This is an interesting one. This was pretty tough for me to figure out and calculate. I'm really doing an average over the course of the year, but we do spend a fair amount of money on clothes. And personally, I need to look, professional when I'm working. So I need to set aside a budget for looking good. And my wife also feels that's very important for her and her professional life. So personally, I spend about $250 a month on average over the course of the year. And my wife spends about double that. I'd say our budget is about $500 for her. And then we have about $250 set aside for the children over the course of the year. And we do pretty well with that. And obviously having kids at different ages, there's a fair amount of passing down from the older kid down to the younger children. And we make that work. So over the course of a month, we typically spend about $1,000 every month on clothing. Real quick, something I'm super curious about. I get people from all around the world watching these videos and thinking of moving to Vancouver. I'd like to know where you're moving from and where you're thinking of moving from. Comment down below if you would. If you just have a second, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're getting value out of this video, hit that like button. Click the subscribe button if you want to see more videos from me, as I do put out videos just like this one about moving to and living in Vancouver, BC every single week. Now let's get back to the video. As I said, I have 4 children and 2 of them are quite young, and so they're still in daycare, and my daycare expenses have been one of my bigger expenses over the last few years. There was a time not that long ago where the typical daycare was costing up close to $2,000 a month, and I had 3 children in daycare. Thankfully, the government has stepped in and subsidized daycare to make it more affordable. And I think, you know, one of the issues in Canada and in the Lower Mainland is people are choosing not to have children because it's too expensive. But we need new people in Canada in order to drive our economy, which is part of the reason that we've opened up immigration. So the government has decided that one of the best things they can do is subsidize public and private daycares. And so my daycare expenses have been reduced significantly, partially because now I only have 2 kids in daycare, the 2.5-year-olds, but also because of that subsidized cost. And right now, each of my children cost me $490 a month for full-time daycare. There's nothing added to that. We do have to provide food. Food is not provided, but so it's just shy of $1,000 a month for daycare, full-time for 2 children. All right, so this category is activities. And with a family of 6, kids of all sorts of different ages, there's a lot going on. And we want to expose our children to what possibilities are out there and help them find, you know, their talents and their loves and their passions. So there's a fair amount of money that we do spend on this, and this is a bit of obviously a luxury. They do go to public school, not private school. So from 9 to 3 for 2 older children, and from roughly 9 till 5 for the 2 younger children that are in daycare. The older child gets a little more of a budget. We're spending about $250 a month, I would say, on his activities. And he's doing things like swimming, soccer, and parkour at the moment. And as part of this budget, I'm also including the summer camps that we have to put him in. So obviously the school year doesn't go all year round, but we have to work all year round. So we do put them into summer camps that are run by the community centers. They're not terribly expensive, but they run about $150 per week during the summer months. So this $250 is an average for over the course of the year that we're spending. My daughter is the eldest daughter. We're spending about $150 a month on her activities, and she's doing swimming. She's also doing some cooking classes, but we're not doing quite as much with her just yet. Probably doing more as she gets a bit older, but again, also during the summer months, she's going through some of those summer camps. The 2 younger kids have not been in any activities yet, primarily because under 3 years old, each child needs an adult with them in the activity. So like my 2 eldest kids went to gymnastics when they were under 3 because it would just need one parent to go with them. We can't commit to that with the 2 younger kids. So they haven't been in any activities as of yet. Actually, that's not entirely true. They've done a couple swimming lessons here and there, but nothing really consistent. So budget line item for those 2 is 0. It's also 0 for Sophie because she, at the moment, isn't doing any extracurricular activities. She's busy enough with work and with caring for her children and having a social life. Myself, one of the important things for me is staying physically fit. So I do have a gym membership to a CrossFit gym, which isn't the cheapest thing in the world, and that's budgeted at about $200 a month. So between the 6 of us, we're looking at about $600 a month for our activities. All right, so another line item here is self-care, and basically this is just getting our hair cut. My haircuts are probably the most frequent. I'm going every 5 to 6 weeks. My wife is probably every 3 to 4 months, I think. I don't know, I honestly don't know for sure. And then my kids, it really varies. The eldest needs to get his haircut more often. It's probably about every couple months. The next one, she probably goes, I think she's only been twice to a hairdresser to get her haircut. The little ones haven't gone to a hairdresser at all yet. Obviously, you know, those budget items are a little bit lower, but we're budgeting as a family about $200 every single month for going to the hairdresser. And then there's transportation. Now we have 2 cars, and having 6 people in our family, unfortunately we don't rely on cycling or walking or riding the bus that frequently. I mean, I do walk the kids to school as an example because we are within walking distance, but for work, my work takes me all around the Lower Mainland. I can't take transit. I can't take a bike to do that. So we both own vehicles. They're not particularly expensive vehicles, not particularly extravagant. 2015 Audi and a 2012 Ford. Basically, we just need to be able to move our family around the city. Both of those vehicles are paid for. Thankfully, we don't have any ongoing carrying costs for those vehicles. but there are expenses, obviously. And so we budget roughly about $300 a month for gas. Keep in mind, gas in Vancouver is the most expensive in Canada, or amongst the most expensive. You're looking at the moment, it just reduced a little bit. I think it's about $1.80 a liter at the moment, but not too long ago it was $2.30 a liter. And then for insurance, we're looking for the two vehicles at about $350 a month. Again, insurance costs in Vancouver in British Columbia are fairly reasonable. They used to be one of the highest in the country, but there were some changes in the way that ICBC was charging. So the cost has come down a bit in comparison to the way that it is around the country. But two vehicles, $350. Neither one of us has any sort of driving record. We've been driving for a very long time. For me, it's been about 30 years. For my spouse, it's been about 20. So we have very clean, long-term driving records, still paying $350 a month. And then maintenance, we have budgeted about $150 a month. So in total, our cost for transportation is $800 a month. Now, we will pay occasionally for a car share or an Uber drive, and that's kind of all incorporated into that $800. It's not a significant amount of our expense personally. And then we have household expenses. So there is one here that is pretty frivolous, I would say, a little bit luxurious, and that's hiring cleaners. We do have cleaners come to the house every couple weeks. They were just here today, in fact. And the thing is, when you have 4 children, there's some things that I feel you just need to do to sort of stay sane and keep your head above water. Hiring cleaners are one of the big changes that relieved a lot of stress in my life. So this costs $240 every single month. It's $120 to have a full house clean every 2 weeks. That's money that I know is a bit frivolous and luxurious, but I really do feel is important and money well spent. And then in terms of utilities, we have electricity. For our house, roughly 2,600 square feet, costs about $150 a month for the house. Now that is just the lighting and the TV and the electrical equipment. It's not our heat or any sort of cooling system. That comes from natural gas. And so that runs our stove and the furnace. That's $100 a month. We don't have any sort of cooling system. I should correct that. We do have an electric air conditioner that we've been running the last couple of years. So that is included in that electrical cost, an average annual monthly cost of $150 every single month. And natural gas is $100 a month. Phones, we don't have a home phone. Both my wife and I have cell phones. Obviously I need that for work and business, and that costs each of us $50, so $100 a month combined for our 2 phones. Internet/TV, we're paying roughly $100 a month for that. And those 2 items, I'd say in Canada, I think people from other parts of the world are a little bit surprised at what our mobile phones cost and what our home internet costs as well. Those are both higher expenses than you might find in other parts of the world, but they're fairly typical for Canada. So a lot of expenses there, but that combination comes to $690 a month. My goodness, that's a lot of expenses. Added all together, that comes to $9,690 we're spending every single month to survive and maybe, thrive in the city of Vancouver. It's an expensive city, no doubt about it. And as a family of 6, there are a lot of expenses. I'd say you're probably looking at something very close to this with young children that are probably in daycare as well. If you're even a family of 4, you're not gonna be far off of this budget. And in combination, what this works out to annually is $116,280. To go back to our original question, is $100,000 enough to survive and thrive in the city of Vancouver? The answer unequivocally is absolutely no. You need a lot more money than that. Just to meet this budget, you would need an income of $162,000. There's roughly $46,000 of income tax, provincial and federal income tax in BC. So that works out to about $115,000 annually that you'd be walking away from, based on an annual income of $162,000. You'd just be making this budget. There's obviously no room for vacations in this budget. You're also not saving a rainy day fund. You're not putting money aside for your retirement or for the kids' school in the future. All of those things are crazy expensive as well. And so I'd say, as a rule of thumb, you're probably looking at least $200,000 of income that you'd want as a family to be fairly comfortable living in the city of Vancouver and Metro Vancouver in general. And if you are thinking of moving to Vancouver, be sure to reach out. I am a real estate agent that's helped hundreds of families move to Vancouver over my 16-year career. My contact information is right there on the screen and down in the description down below. Reach out anytime if you're thinking about moving to Vancouver and we can get that ball rolling. In the meantime, hit the like button if you got some value out of this video, and hit the subscribe button if you would like to see more videos like this. I do put out videos about living in and moving to Vancouver every single week. I'm gonna be back here next week with yet another video, and I really do appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end.